So I've been just wanted to kind of talk about some of the project or the one of the projects that I'm working on, and this is a personal project. And so what I thought about was generally tend to do a lot more fantasy and that type of genre. So I wanted to do something a little bit more current age genre, as well as a little bit of futuristic, and I kind of wanted to mix a steampunk element. So I thought about, as far as the process goes, I thought about this idea that I have, and that I want to just kind of build on this idea. So it's a future world basically, and what happens is ISIS creates a virus or a bacteria that destroys all plastic and petroleum products. So that, to me, that meant that there's the vehicles kind of fall apart. Buildings start falling apart because there's a lot of buildings that are just made with plastic wiring and things like that. Gas dries up, and so people basically there's three different types of people. The poor people, basically what they do is they are overcrowded, they're overtaxed, and they start rising up, killing the politicians, things like that. They create a big aspect of what's going on. So like what's happened is in the large cities, they basically these cities burn to the ground due to the fact that you can't the wiring in the buildings is plastic covered, and when that goes, if it's touching something, it starts a fire. A lot of these buildings burn down. The cities were too big and they couldn't support people without food because your transportation's gone because plastic is ate up. So a lot of the older vehicles are fine, but the bigger vehicle, they can't bring in food as much, so people die, that type of thing. Recycling is a big thing now, where they're trying to use what they have, and so they're patching clothes, that type of thing. Plastic is like gold. Plastic is the new gold, because what basically happens is this virus turns all plastic, so it's clothing, that type of thing, into sludge. And so they've worked on more of the other bases, solar energy, groundwater, and because we don't have all these carbon emissions from vehicles, the planet actually gets a little bit colder. Not like you know Arctic cold, but it drops a good 10 degrees, 20 degrees in a lot of places. The large cities, the people who stay there basically turn into scavengers. There's gangs, but the gang warfare, because the drugs dried up, the gangs actually started uh, building communities, and they're not, it's not super crazy, but they're small populations. A lot of weapons are gone because the plastic components. So they while they do have some of the older guns and stuff like that are strictly metal, some of the plastic parts in the newer guns basically kind of dumped. So swords, spears, guns. So it's a little bit tribal, or a little bit retrofitted. The military, basically what they see is um, once their world leaders die, what happens is they decide, well, you know what, we're going to answer to ourselves. So they've actually turned into somewhat of a uh, kind of a power on their own. However, um, they do late, they work with a lot of old tech, the old weapons, old stuff like that. The they do have some high tech, and I'll explain that in a second. But basically, they start working with bioware drugs and stuff like that, radiations, and get some mutations. Now, I wanted some, aspects of what's happening. So there is some mutations. There's zombies, but not the typical undead zombie. They're basically just mindless, powerful creatures, rage filled, that type of thing. So the rich, however, they do something a little bit different. they basically buy up what they need to. They start nuclear power in their compounds and stuff like that, and they work with computers, AI, that type of thing. Create androids, some cybernetic components, um, and they actually, a lot of their companies failed because, who are they going to sell to when most people want, you know, that population? So big companies like Microsoft and Google, they tend to fall down because they're software-based companies and no one's buying software anymore. The other aspect is they get this kind of mentality that, since they're the 1%, they're going to start keeping it in the family, and so some inbreeding happens. And then basically, because of this virus, it creates mutations in certain strains of genetic structures. So you'll have, some mutations on, animals and things like that. And then the certain people, basically, this mutation unlocks uh, what do I want to call aspect of what's a mental capacity. So basically, what happens is the people have developed a magic, and it's not really magic. It's just they all get mind powers, whether it's control over fire or telekinesis or reading minds, that type of thing. Well, these people start becoming naturalists, and it turns into a type of cult, and they go out in the woods, they defend the forests, and um, are by far the most powerful small percentage group. And they can actually, the military has tried to overpower them, but because they've developed their magic so much, there's no way that they can do it. So I come up with this concept, and the heading is by far not the right one yet, but just for the project name. And I wrote down comments on each individual section. So, small towns, fences, forests, so, military, talked about the people, that type of thing. And I also had a section in there about cows. Basically, all these mass farms can't send out their product fast enough, so they tend to basically leave it as it is, and the cows kind of roam around. So cows are a big thing in this one. Um, so that being said, I kind of wanted to build up some ideas, and I kind of got sidetracked. And so what I did was I actually built up some real quick rough sketches of some people, and I was going to draw costumes over them. And I got sidetracked for about 2 days doing this, 2 nights while I was working, and I got sidetracked because of one, it was a new technique, and it was something a little bit different I learned from digital tutors, and two, it was um, like I said, just it was I got sidetracked. So I started building thumbs, and in this case, what I did was I just created some roughs, and the rough concepts are clothing articles, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix and match and create different style characters. So I basically created a big sheet of characters. I'm going to have, it's not done by any means, but I wanted to have a little bit more information in there to create this post. I don't want to say post-apocalyptic because the world isn't destroyed. It's just hindered. It's like the 1920s, 1900s with current tech of some sorts and stuff like that. So those are things that I wanted to do, and so this is kind of the project that I was working on, and I just wanted to kind of go along this line. And this is just the poor clothing sheet, so developed characters and things like that. So I wanted to really work on um, more of the conceptual ideas to develop my thought process of creating ideas, creating concepts behind this, and then I can create a whole costume set with this and take it from there and move on to other stages. But I wanted to create more more working on the workflow, more of the concept art aspect than the project is, or than individual illustrations and stuff like that. So this is my first pass at, or first first start of creating a modular component system for clothing. And so basically what I'm going to do is just kind of mix and match these clothings and take the ones I like and work and develop them a little bit further. All right, and so that's kind of what I'm working on right now. All right.